And I believe that this is what Jesus is teaching us. Next slide, please. I think what he's teaching us is that in order to really get a prayer life, you have to get a trusting relationship with God. A complete trusting relationship with God. I mean, could it possibly be that the way a good dad feels about his little girl or little boy is exactly how God feels about you? And is it at all possible that the way a little girl or a little boy feels about their dad is exactly how God wants you to feel about him? And could it be that the way that little boy or little girl is to relate to their fathers the same way God wants you and me to relate to him? Daddy, I love you, I trust you, you are so good. And you are so there for me. Next slide. I love this picture. This was when I was first becoming aware of the world. John F. Kennedy was the president. And one of the first political memories I have is when he was assassinated, which was pretty incredible because I was still in utero. Or maybe not. And it's this incredible picture of JFK sitting at his desk in the Oval Office. And there's little John under the desk just kind of playing around, having a good time. Kids used to come into his office all the time. You know what the fascinating thing about this picture is? It came right after a 3-hour telephone call where he basically averted the Cuban Missile Crisis. And there's little John playing in the room under the desk. JFK had a rule: nobody walked into his office unless being summoned or with an appointment. There were 2 exceptions to the rule. Next slide, please. It was little John and Caroline. Because they, uninvited, could stroll in, burst open the door, walk right up to Daddy's lap. Now, he's the president. Yeah, he's the most powerful man in the world. Yeah, he's trying to avert World War. Yeah, but he's like, these are my kids. And they're welcome with me anytime, and I'm there for them. I'm just wondering, is it possible, could it be that that is the picture that Jesus said we need to have when it comes to how we relate to God? That he's Daddy, always available, always open, a great big heart that loves to have us come, that loves to cheer on our successes, that loves to just bandage up our wounded knees, that loves to hear us laugh, that loves to meet our needs. And because he's Daddy, he's Papa, we just love to spend time with him, goofing around, talking about serious stuff, whatever. I think Jesus, in a culturally relevant way, was profoundly saying that is exactly what it's like. And if you really want to get a prayer life off the ground, you got to have a daddy kind of love, trust, relationship deal happening. And when it's like that, prayer becomes the easiest, most natural thing in all the world. So how do you get that? There's 2 ways. Go to the next slide and I'm going to see what happens. Leave it there. The first thing is we need to get adopted into God's family. See, John chapter 1 and verse 12 says something fascinating. These are the words. It says, to all who received him, Christ, to all who received Christ, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. When we receive Jesus into our life as our forgiver, as our leader, as our rescuer, when we believe on him, when we trust in him as to be the one who alone is sufficient to wipe our moral slate clean and reconcile us to God and take us to heaven and give us the best life possible, when that happens, we become something we're not naturally. We become children of God. We get adopted into his family. I don't know, I think it was maybe 3 years ago that I first heard Cammie Lenning and her husband Doug talk about how they wanted to adopt a little girl from China. And we began praying with them, And they filled out paperwork after paperwork and request after request. And they got one document after another officially approved and sent in. They began to spend tens of thousands of dollars. And it took 3 years before they were finally able to get to China and fly there and spend time and bring home little Lydia May. And they brought her to their home as their child. And they call her daughter, and they love her, and they provide for her, and they're giving her a life she could never have envisioned apart from that adoption process. And they were willing to go through all of that grief and all that time and all that money and all that effort and all that heartache because they just wanted a little girl of their own. And if you ever stop to really think that God the Father has done something very much like that, that he was willing to spend so much time, so much energy, make such incredible sacrifice, his own son Jesus, to die on a cross, all in an effort to just let you get adopted into his family. So he could call you child and you could call him daddy. And he could give you the best life possible. If we want to really get our prayer off the ground, we've got to be adopted into his family, where he really is our heavenly Papa. And then maybe some of you have actually done that, but it's like not working. And maybe that's because you need to adjust your view of God. To see him as he really is, the one who's adopted you what he's really like. That God is not that cold, distant, good provider who you don't want to cross, or you're going to get smacked. That maybe God is more like Tickle Me Dad. Maybe he's more like Tea Party Dad. Maybe he's more like Hide and Seek Dad. And then when a dad is rolling around on the ground with one of his kids and they're laughing and they're tickling, and maybe that's the picture of what our heavenly Papa is actually like. We're going to spend like the next 3 weeks talking about prayer, and we're going to be challenged by some of the best teachers in the country to pray big prayers, dangerous prayers. And we're going to pray them together just to see what God does. But as we kicked it off, I just wanted to remind you who you're praying to and what he's like. Now, here's how I want to close today. When you walk in, you got a little business side card, right? It said, My One Prayer. Will you pull that out? Just pull that out. I have a question for you. If you could pray just one prayer, and you knew that God would hear it and do something about it, what would you pray? Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Would you just write it on that card? You can be as generic as you want to be, specific, but if you could pray just one prayer, something you ache for God to do, what would that one prayer be? Just write it on that card. And if you can't bring yourself to write it, then just, okay, I get it. In your head, kind of, put it on there in the visible ink, only God can read it. But here's my one prayer. If there was only one, here it is, God, do this. And here's what we're going to do. And you don't have to. This is voluntary. This may be very meaningful for some, and if it's not for you, don't worry about it. It doesn't mean anything about our spirituality or spiritual journey, whether we do or don't. But we're going to have the worship team sing for us a final song. And as they sing, I'm going to invite you, if this would be meaningful for you, to take that one prayer that you've written out, to walk up that step and just hang it on that cross. There's lots of little nails just hanging on one. If they all get filled, we can hang more than one on a nail. And by hanging it there, you're just saying, Jesus, here's my one prayer. Heavenly Father, Heavenly Daddy, here is the one thing I just want you to do. And let's just see over the next 4 weeks, if God doesn't take your one prayer do something incredible.